you once, if you were to come home from a really good day at work, what made it good? And I've spent a lot of time over the years thinking about the answer to this question, about what it means to make a meaningful career, about what it means to find a job that you are truly passionate about, and then dig your heels in so that at the end of the day, you get to come home and say that it was a good one. I've had the really good fortune of being raised by two people who dug their heels in and found meaning in their work, who invested their intelligence and kindness and thoughtfulness and thoroughness and desire to leave the world a better place into careers that by any measurement would be considered a success. This has on occasion been both a blessing and a curse for me. Someone who, in an effort to find that same meaning in their work, has taken an often windy path filled with sometimes questionable decisions that my parents have stood by as I've made, perhaps for the sake of letting me figure it out on my own. But I've always assumed that it was at least partially because they both felt like they couldn't truthfully claim that a straight path was any better than a meandering one. The paths that Jackie and Charles took to get here today were not necessarily linear either. Each of my parents came from very different families that in very different ways taught them the importance of hard work and passion, but were also of a generation that wanted more and different and better for their kids. And I think that each of my parents felt a duty to find more and better and different, which pushed them both to be amongst the first generation in each of their families to graduate college and then to venture out in search of their own paths. For each of them, the theater was their first career. It's what brought them to 43rd Street and 9th Avenue, to the corner where they met while my mom was waiting tables and my dad was bartending across the street. The story goes that my dad would watch my mom through the window of her restaurant. He was so impressed by how many plates she could carry. He had to ask her out on a date. I recently asked them both how they ended up in the theater, and I asked them independently, and in very classic Jackie and Charles responses, my dad spent about 20 minutes talking about the exploration of character. And my mom, without missing a beat, said, "When I was 12, I saw The Sound of Music and I decided I wanted to be a governess from the Swiss Alps. And when my mom told me that was not realistic, I decided I would be an actor so I could play a governess in the Swiss Alps." They each worked in the theater into their early 30s, a career choice that led them to a handful of other jobs in restaurants and bars, as a yoga instructor and a cab driver, and even as a 50s cigarette girl handing out Benson and Hodge cigarettes on a New York City street corner. And that is definitely the weirdest job that my dad has ever had.
In touch with his feelings.
In their early 30s, they both decided to go back to school, my mom for counseling and student development, and my dad for social work. And this pivot is what led them to the careers that became such a part of who they are, and the careers that we're here celebrating today. And though I have referenced and fantasized about their early days in the theater and driving cabs and bartending, the careers that they are retiring from this week are the ones that I have been watching for 30 years. Over the years, my parents have offered me several nuggets of professional wisdom, sometimes solicited and direct, like when I asked my mom to teach me how to manage up or negotiate a contract, and sometimes less solicited, less direct, like when I told my parents I was going to work at a fish market in Costa Rica, and I was 24, and I asked if I could have my mail forwarded to them, and my dad said, "You know, if I had put $10,000 in the bank when I was your age, I would have $1 million right now." And then he just kind of looked at me like this. But the most important lessons that I've learned from them have really been from watching and absorbing and creating my own narrative about what my career should and would look like based on the models that they were offering. And from each of them, I have learned different things. From my dad, I have seen someone who has for 30 years been 100% dedicated to evolving his role on this planet so that it makes the most positive impact possible. He's the most thoughtful and most intentional person I know, and has managed to integrate his desire for growth and goodness into a career that has touched the lives of hundreds of patients and colleagues and groups. Not to mention the hundreds of other unassuming people in restaurants and waiting rooms and street corners who have suddenly found themselves talking to him about their narcissistic mothers. From my mother, I have observed someone who is powerful and intelligent and focused while still being kind and sensitive and so funny. I've learned from her the power of balancing preparedness with flexibility, of being direct yet understanding, and that motivation is nothing without mindfulness. In other words, from my mom, I have learned what it means to be a badass boss. On Thursday, we attended the reception at Princeton for my mom, and listening to her colleagues talk about her really incredible catalog of accomplishments, of which there were a lot. Nobody talked about any of her professional achievements without mentioning her compassion and her humility and her ability to make people feel really heard. And standing in that room, I realized that I have never fully understood the impact of my mom's work on this world. And I found myself feeling really overwhelmed by how lucky I am. And also really bad about how big a jerk I was for most of my 2003. And as I'm reading it, I don't feel that great about the take your daughter to work day comment. I think about all these things that I've observed, like how to manage and how to communicate and how to deliver, when I think about how I will know that I have had a meaningful career. But the truth is, and I understand this even more listening to Shanti and Albert, that I will never fully understand the impact of my parents' work on their colleagues and their patients and their students and all of the lives that they have touched in their professional careers. But the most valuable lesson that I can and have taken from watching their careers over the years has little to do with anything that they did during their work hours. When I've asked them each about how they define a successful career, they reference passion and having an impact, but they also reference finding a career that allows you to prioritize and take care of your family. And when they reference family, of course, they mean me. But also, as importantly, and I think perhaps as uniquely, they mean each other. Their jobs as psychotherapist and director of international affairs have always come second to their jobs as parents and partners. And I think that one of the things that makes them so special is that in addition to prioritizing their kid in our unit, they have never lost sight of their relationship, and that has always been a priority to them, as is evidenced by the fact that they're retiring in the same week and starting this chapter truly together, which I think maybe they don't even see the uniqueness of because it's so ingrained in who they are. If I asked my parents in an interview when they came home from a good day at work, what made that day really good, I know that it would for both of them be as much about what they did as what they got to come home to. From my parents, the greatest lesson that I have learned about having a meaningful career is that a meaningful career only means something if it's part of a meaningful life. And when you have figured that out, as my parents have done so beautifully, then you have been truly successful. So cheers to the most successful people that I know as they start this new journey together.
Cheers. Cheers.